Okay, before I forget, I was told to tell you to fill out your evaluations before you leave. Okay,
Or do them now.
Or do them now. You already think we're going to be great, right? Just put a 5. So hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. My name's Ashley Burch. I'm a voice actor and a writer in the industry, and you also might know me from the web series I do with my brother. Hey, Ash, what you playing?
And I'm Rosalind Wiseman. I have the distinct pleasure of getting to collaborate with Ashley on all sorts of interesting projects. One of them we're going to show you today. I'm the author of a book called Queen Bees and Wannabes. It was turned into the movie, thank you, Mean Girls. And then the most recent book that I wrote is about the social lives of boys called Masterminds and Wingmen. And besides writing, or as a part of my writing, is I'm in constant dialogue with young people about the things that they worry about, that they're concerned about, the problems, the triumphs, but really the things that can be really complicated to them, or they feel like they're being misjudged or misinterpreted, and that adults are assuming about them incorrectly. So the other part of what I do is I work with teachers and administrators and parents to be able for them to be more credible to young people when they're having a problem, to be able to challenge those adults when they're being hypocritical or when they're giving soundbite answers to really complicated problems. So I'm in constant dialogue with kids. And so a couple of years ago, when I was working with Masterminds and Wingmen, the book about boys, and I had 400 boys helping me, but it was really clear to me that gaming was something that was misunderstood by a lot of the adults that I work with, and I continue to do that work with adults, with counselors and teachers, for them to understand that gaming is not this horrible thing. And at the same time, I needed help, and so I found Ashley, and I asked Ashley to help me, and she was instrumental in helping me with the chapter on gaming in Masterminds and Wingmen. But as a result, also, we came here last year, and we presented on boys and social status and gaming. But that was, not really the end for me, and it wasn't for Ashley. I got really interested in all different things that were happening in my work with gaming and with girls, and what did boys think? And was it true that girls only played Minecraft and only played Candy Crush and only had the Kim Kardashian app on their phone? Because I didn't think so. And did boys want girls to play with them? And could they handle wanting to play alongside girls or playing a female protagonist? What was that about? So we're here today to do the next step of this. But I also have to tell you that my greatest achievement thus far, and I have to tell you, I was sort of really psyched about this. I don't know if you've noticed, but I am the 10 of clubs in the deck.
In the GDC deck.
In the GDC deck.
She's so excited.
I'm very excited.
She called me immediately.
I know. I'm the person with the helmet. It's sort of cheesy, but I went for it. So I'm the 10 of clubs. And last year when we came and presented, this was a big deal to us about boys and social status and gaming. So where were we going to go next? And
this talk about girls and gaming and their gaming habits made us think a lot about a lot of truths that we hold as an industry. So we have all these, things that we kind of take for granted as fact, like girls only play mobile games and guys only want to play a game that has a male protagonist. Games can only be a game if it has X. A gamer is only a gamer if they do Y. But we wanted to know, are these just assumptions? Are they actually based on any sort of factual data? Or is the community being asked about these things? Or are we just assuming that these things are true when really they're not? So I reached out to Rosalind because I don't have access to children, which is a really creepy sentence to say. It's good that I don't have access to children, probably. Rosalind does, not in a creepy way, because she's an educator. And so we decided that we were going to survey kids across the country and ask them these questions, girls and boys. Girls, what are your gaming habits? What do you want to see in games, et cetera? Boys, what do you think of girl gamers? And we're going to share those results with you today. We're really excited about the results, honestly, because we think they're fascinating. Hopefully you will too. But it led us to a few conclusions, the first of which is that everything we think about boys is wrong.
Girls love playing Call of Duty.
And as an industry, we're in an echo chamber, and we might be basing our decisions about how we create our games and our protagonists on information that isn't really relevant. Which ultimately led us to the question, who are we making these games for? I'm going to be real with all of you. We're going to tell you you should put more female heroes in your games.
Shocking.
So, shocking. 2 women at GDC saying this? What? Insane. So if you hate that idea, you can start frowning now and continue throughout the speech. But while a moral argument could be made for including more female heroes, it's not the one we're going to make. We believe in that argument. We think it's completely valuable. But we want to give you a practical framework and justifications for why you should be doing this. And we also wanted to mention that although the average age of a gamer is a lot older than the kids that we surveyed, it's closer to 30, these kids are going to be your bread and butter for the next decade plus. So it's best to start listening to what they want and what they value now. So before we go into the nitty-gritty of the data, Roz wanted to go over some of the strengths and limitations and how difficult it is to get a survey like this into schools.
Yeah, I wanted you to understand what this is like. Maybe some of you do work where you are getting information about who's playing your games or who's buying your games. But in my relationships with schools, I really went around the country to all different kinds of schools and said, please have your students fill this out. And in some ways, because of the relationships I have with schools, we were able to do it as well as we were. With 14, we had 1,853 that filled out the survey, and of 1,400 of those, approximately a little bit more, were between the ages of 6th and 12th grade. So grades between 6th and 12th grade, which means they're between like 11 and 18. So who did we have who took the survey? So who did we hear from? So we heard from a pretty even split of what we think of as, gendered-wise, as females and males. But here's the thing. This is why I wanted to spend some time talking to you about the survey itself, is that we had 4% that preferred not to answer. What we wanted to put in this survey is female, male, and other. We were absolutely not allowed to do that. We had school districts that said, you will absolutely not put other, or you can't have any part of this survey to our children. So what we did was we put prefer not to answer, and then we had underneath that space for young people to speak, to talk about how they define their gender. We also heard that they were from all over the country. They were rural, they were urban, they were suburban. Now, suburban is important because this was a lot of, as you can see, private, public, and charter schools. So we got this survey into jurisdictions of public schools. Again, somewhat challenging. Now, the other part that we asked them is that had you ever been a target of racism, homophobia, or sexism online? Playing a game. Here's what their answers were. So we had none at 52%. And we had racist targeting at 13, homophobic at 18, and sexism and sexist language at 17. But here's the big problem in my work. It is extremely difficult and almost impossible to be able to say the words to young people that they would associate with these terms. So I can't say on the survey, have you been called a faggot in the last week playing a game? Have you been called a pussy? Have you been called words like this? Because we wouldn't have been able to get it into the survey, right? Alabama would have said to me, sorry, right? So, Pennsylvania had a huge problem with this. So these are challenges that I think that we don't know really the answers to this because they don't associate. When you're in 6th grade, it's so normalized, or 7th grade, or 8th grade, or 12th grade. These things are so normalized that you wouldn't necessarily feel that that a targeted word like faggot or gay in a derogatory way, or pussy in a derogatory way, that would be a problem. So that's what I know about young people, meaning I think that these numbers are actually vastly undervalued, underinflated. Okay? All right. Now, that's who we got. That's who sort of the groups of kids were. But the first question we wanted to show you was, girls, what games do you play? And here's the answer. So what I think you might be super psyched about, and you can imagine how psyched Ashley was about this, is that we've got all different kinds of games. Girls were able to answer all the different things that they were interested in. So you'll see that we've got 26% were playing first-person shooter games. We had the most at 36% of RPGs, which we don't necessarily think about with girls. We think girls play puzzle games. So if you think about this, what's really important about it is that we've got 36% is more than mobile games also, which is also what we traditionally think of girls and what they play. Now, I have to tell you, I wasn't that surprised when I saw it. And let me give you a reason. Let me give you one reason why, and why I wanted to be here and share things like this with you. Right before we opened the survey, we had been putting the instruments together, we had been thinking about the questions. I went to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and I spoke to a 7th grade summit, meaning in the morning, it was from all over kids, all over from the area. In the morning, I had 700 girls in one place, talking to them about all different kinds of things, about the conflicts they get into. And in the afternoon, I had to do 700 boys, 7th grade boys, all together, all right? I actually like doing that. That's why I do what I do for a living, because I like doing things like that. But one of the things I've learned from working with people like you and with Ashley is how important it is to be able to integrate gaming and imagery into my presentations. So with the girls, if this was in October 18th, 700 girls, 7th grade, I put up a slide of Call of Duty, and the girls went bananas. They were high-fiving, they were yelling, they were totally happy, they were doing what I usually see with boys. They were recognizing imagery that they really like. And I started asking the girls just on the spot, what are the games that you like, girls? And I started going through all these different games that very few people think girls play. And the girls were responding with cheering and screaming. These are just girls in Pennsylvania. It was so awesome that I called Ashley right away after I got off, and I was like, this is so incredible, this is so incredible. I wish I could have recorded this. One of the things I want us to think about, or what I'm going to have to think about actually, is that I'm going to have to take this information and I'm going to have to go back into my other life, right? My life of educators and policy people and stuff like that, and think about gender equity in terms of, and I'm trying to get the terms ready in my head to be able to do this, it might be really cool and a way of looking at gender equity that we have girls who like blowing shit up, right? And they want to play first-person shooter games, and that maybe is a way to look at gender equity. That's going to be probably a hard sell, and when I go back to teachers and parents and all that kind of stuff, but I think it's really an important issue to be able to recognize where the girls are.
And of course, the other part of the survey, we wanted to focus also on boys and what boys think of girl gamers, how they perceive them. And one of the main questions we wanted to know is whether or not boys wanted to see more girls playing the same games as them. And the result is pretty clearly yes. You can see here, middle school boys, 70% of middle school boys and 87% of high school boys want to see more girls playing the same games as them. So then we were also curious, what games do these boys think that girls are playing? Do they think they're only playing Candy Crush? It turns out they think they're playing everything. So boys already assume, as you can see, the lowest percentage is at 14% of they don't play games. So pretty much no boy that we surveyed thinks that girls don't play games. So what this tells me, and what Rosalind and I were super interested by, is that we as an industry perceive our consumer base, especially our young consumer base, of men thinking that they see their hobby, this hobby, as a boys' club. I only want boys playing games. I don't want any girls. Girls have cooties, whatever, in my games. But this data shows that's very much not the case. And yet we keep creating games that are sort of catering to this idea of what we think boys want to see and what boys value. But we clearly are wrong in some respect, because I was shocked by this. I don't know about you guys, but I was like, wow, boys don't think that girls just play mobile games. Boys think they play everything. In fact, FPS and mobile are almost exactly the same percentage. So not only do boys want more girls playing their games, they already think they're there, which is a huge departure from, I think, how most of us perceive and think of boys that play games primarily. And we also wanted to know about protagonists, and whether or not the kids are more likely to play a game if the protagonist is the same gender as them. And what we found is that it doesn't necessarily matter in terms of what games they're going to play, which isn't that surprising because you guys make really interesting and engaging and innovative games. So of course people are going to want to play them. These kids are always going to want to play them. But the interesting thing is when you ask them about their preference. So when they have the option, do they prefer playing as a man or a woman? Here's what the boys said. So I know here it says it seems like a low percentage of female, but what I want to focus on is the change from a preference to male to no preference. So you have the middle school boys, the majority of them want to play as a man, and a lesser percentage don't really have a preference. But it shifts as the boys get older to where they don't really care as much. There's a higher percentage of high school boys that don't care either way than there are high school boys that prefer playing as a man. And the inverse happens when you ask girls. So when girls are in middle school, they have less of a preference. But as they get older, it jumps 20% higher of girls preferring to play as their own gender. So what's interesting to me about this is that if men don't care over time, and women prefer to play as their own gender more over time, it seems like it's more advantageous to me to include female protagonists because you're not losing anything with the boys. As they get older, they don't really care. But girls have a higher preference, so why are we not catering to the demographic with the stronger desire?
So the next slide was the next point that we wanted to highlight for you all. We had so many different things that were in this survey. So the next thing that we wanted to highlight for you all was, did both boys and girls feel that there was a problem in representation of women in games? Was that a problem? Did they think it was a problem? Did they not think it was a problem? And so, again, I had this very serendipitous experience where, this doesn't happen all the time, I have to tell you. Last week, so it was Gettysburg, October 18th, okay? Last week, I had another experience where I had to call Ashley because I got very excited and very enthusiastic because I was in another public school. It was another group of 7th and 8th graders. And I was talking to them about conflict. And I was talking to them specifically about something that I just want to highlight for you all about how I have been able to talk to young people. And it is about how we get from, when people like me talk to children about sort of nonviolent conflict resolution kind of things, about talking about your feelings, it's weird, right? Like feedback sandwiches, iMessages. Do you remember middle school when people would tell you about how to talk to people when you were really angry and you basically wanted to say, I hate you, and you're making my life miserable, and I need you to leave me alone, right? But we, in schools, tell kids to talk about their feelings and say, I really don't like it when you take my phone and you take a picture of your genitals and send it to the girl that I have a huge crush on, making it think like I'm the one that did it, and then I get in trouble for being in violation of my school's technology policy because the administrator doesn't realize that maybe it wasn't me who sent the picture, right? That's what we deal with in schools all the time. So how do I deal and how do I teach young people about iMessaging in that context, right? Because it's weird. It feels really cheesy. Am I really going to say to somebody, it really hurts my feelings when you send a dick pic, right? That's just weird, and it's cheesy. So one of the things I have realized is if you put it in the context of a game, if you put it in the context where I say to young people, all right, imagine that you're in any kind of competition, any kind of game, I don't care what game you play. What do you do when you are getting ready to be in a battle at a competition? Well, the kids go from being like this to being like this. Hands absolutely shoot up. I get my resources, I get my armor, I get my strength, I figure out where my dragon is, I figure out where the land is, I figure out all this stuff, bum, 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 bum. I say to them, all right, but what about your opponent? What do they get? What are the resources? What do they need? Oh, well, they have to figure out, I got to figure out, they got their resources, if it's a player, if it's FIFA or Madden or whatever, I got to figure out, what they've got. It goes through this whole machinations of what that possibly could be. What could the counter be? And then I say to them, what could the counter be? Do you think about it? Sure, of course I do. And they start talking to me a lot about that. And then I say to them, so do you go into a game and play any kind of game thinking that you're going to be 100% successful? You will score 100 points and your opponent will score 0 points, right? No, I just keep practicing. Exactly. The goal of being in the thing I'm talking to you about being in a social conflict and having mastery over social conflict is about being able to do your best, to practice and practice and practice, and be able to think about it in terms of what are my resources, what are the opponent's resources, what are the things they're going to do to push back on me, how am I going to handle it, not so it's perfect in the way that I destroy the other person. That's the only difference in gaming versus real life. I say to the kids the only difference is the goal is not total destruction of the opposing force or being best friends with the person. It is being able to speak your truth and do it in the most powerful way possible where you have the best chance of success. Not a guarantee. There are no guarantees in the world. People are annoying. They're probably not going to listen to you. But what is the best chance of success? I have used games so successfully as imagery for young people and for them to be able to go, wait a minute, because the biggest thing that I've got, the biggest resistance in teaching what I teach, is that kids say there's no point in confronting somebody, it's just going to make it worse. So this imagery of games has dramatically changed my ability to be credible to young people and to get them engaged in the possibility of taking the risk to be able to confront somebody in a social conflict. Now, what does that have to do with what I'm about to say with this point? It's that in spite of this, when we asked young people, well, what do you care about, what do you think about the representation of gender in games? I was at this presentation in the 7th and 8th grade group of kids, and there were 200 of them. And so I was using this representation, just like I talked to you about, just like I just said, about how to deal in a conflict. 20 minutes later, at the end of the presentation, it was Q&A time. And I had this guy who raised his hand. His name is Theo. And he said to me, I want to go back to that gaming thing that you were talking about, because there's something that's been bothering me. And what he then started talking about is his extremely strong feelings about the sexism in games and the sexual objectification of women in games. I'm going to show you Theo because I was so excited that I got him to call his mother and give me permission to record him after this presentation was done, after my presentation last week was done, because I was hoping to be able to show it to you all. But what was awesome, even more amazing than Theo saying this stuff, and that he would say it in public around all of his peers, was that when he was done speaking, those 200 children, I swear to you, started clapping. That is 200 7th grade kids clapping in support of a boy in their class talking about sexism in games. Young people are doing some pretty amazing things. So here's Theo after our presentation.
This game, and it's called Mortal Kombat, and I really like it, but I noticed that a lot of the female characters are wearing very scantily clad clothing, which doesn't make any sense, because if you're playing a video game like that, you expect everybody to be armored, because it's a fighting game. And if these girls are dressed how we think that they should be dressed and objectified like this, it just defeats the entire purpose of wearing armor. So I just thought that it's kind of polluting young kids' brains to think that this is how they should dress. Like, this is how women will dress everywhere, and not just like, yeah.
And Theo, if you had a female character that was dressed in the kind of armor that you want to see, would you want to play that character?
Yeah, a lot more. I would definitely respect the character a lot more for like having some dignity.
All right. Now I get to go and tell Theo that you applauded seeing his video. So we wanted to see, well, I mean, is Theo alone? Well, we actually knew that Theo, by this point, because this was last week, we knew that Theo was not alone. So what I want to show you now is, are females too often targeted as sex objects? So what we have is middle school and high school boys. Remember these middle school boys are 11, right? They're 11, 12, 13 years old. What we have here is 61% of them strongly agree or agree that this is the case. We only have 6% who strongly disagree or disagree at 9%. So the vast majority of boys think that there is too much sexual objectification of women in games. Is this mine or yours next?
It's yours.
Okay. And now we go to the girls. Now this isn't shocking. What we've got is about 82%, if I have my things right, who feel really, really strongly. Now, I don't know, this is probably not a huge surprise to you all. But what I do want to show you now is that, and I am not making this up, at the same presentation afterwards, a girl came up to me. I couldn't have done this, really, I couldn't have. And she came up to me and talked to me about her frustrations. And the reason that she's frustrated, her name is Rebecca, is that she loves playing Trivia Crack. Loves it. It's her favorite game right now. But one of the things that is annoying her to no end is that when she's playing Trivia Crack, a God of War advertisement comes in before she can do it, and she can't find the X to stop the ad. And she knows, this is what she said to me, she knows that the people who did the ad are doing it on purpose, that they can't, that she will not be able to stop the ad. And she had very strong feelings about this. So what I did is I recorded her.
Okay, so I play Trivia Crack, and on Trivia Crack, there's always these ads for Game of War. And in Game of War, Kate Upton plays like Athena, and she's barely wearing any clothes, and like her upper area is like always bouncing, and it's disgusting, and it makes me uncomfortable, and I know that it makes other kids uncomfortable. And she's with all these other men, like, you need to fight. And it's just, I personally find it sexist, and I feel like if she's going to be dressed like this, which she definitely shouldn't have been, then why aren't other people, like, why is it just the girl? And she's the only girl, and this game is played by kids, and I don't know any kids who want to see that.
And the thing we also wanted to highlight about those responses is that the majority of both genders say either agree or strongly agree that females are too often objectified in games. The next biggest majority are neutral. And that isn't an implicit, like, no, I disagree. It's that they don't have a preference, which implies that were women to be clothed in actual armor, there wouldn't be an uproar about, like, why aren't they wearing, like string bikini armor anymore? I'm outraged. It's just that they don't have a preference. They don't necessarily have an opinion about it. But the majority of kids do, and the majority of kids agree that often females are too sexualized in games. So we're going to start talking about identifying as a gamer. Ooh. So we asked the kids that we surveyed, what words come to mind when you think of girl gamer? And I actually really love this word cloud because, as you can see, probably the only negative word that comes up a lot is weird, which depending on who you are, maybe that's a compliment. So this is how both boys and girls view girl gamers. So we have competitive, cool, awesome, no for some reason, like, good, nerdy. And we were wondering, okay, so then if this is how the kids perceive girl gamers, how do girls actually feel about being a gamer? So we asked them. And maybe this is not surprising. 65% of girls don't identify, and 35% do. But we wanted to know, of these girls that don't identify as gamers, what is their level of interest? What do they actually care about?
So what we looked at is these are not gamer girls, okay? And frankly, I thought this was one of the more interesting things that we looked at, that we saw. 43% showed an interest. We had a question of rate your interest of games from 1 to 10. So 43% showed interest of 5 or greater. Then we asked them about how many hours they had played in the last week. 23% had played 4 or more hours in the last week, and 38% had played between 1 and 3 hours. And these are girls who do not identify as a gamer. And then we asked them, and this is just, I hope you think this is as interesting as we do, is who is your favorite character in games? And we cross-referenced that with girls who identified as gamers and who did not identify as gamers, and their interest level and their grade. So we're going to show you what they said. Oh, this is super small. Darn it. Darn it. I like the Lutesses from BioShock Infinite because they are a male-female twin, but they have the same intelligence. The female is portrayed as smarter and more strategic in her thinking. The male twin is not above her, and they are portrayed as equals because they are equal, not because the designers thought there needed to be a female character. Now, who was this? This was a girl who was in 10th grade. She had a level 8 interest. She does not identify as a gamer. Sylvana Windrunner from World of Warcraft. She's a woman in a position of power who led her people bravely both in life and death. She's also a military strategist. I also like GLaDOS from Portal for being not only a non-sexualized female robotic character, but also for her witty and sarcastic personality and complete lack of empathy. This was a 10th grade girl, 15 years old, level 8 interest, yes, identified as a gamer. GLaDOS, because she's smart, witty, funny, entertaining, and just the right amount of evil. 9th grade girl, level 8, not a gamer. Natalie and Julia from Harvest Moon, Island of Happiness. I feel like I'm doing some kind of announcement about awards. They are both strong-willed. They both possess confidence and feminine qualities, smart and pretty, and in parentheses, which I feel girls usually aren't allowed to be, even in real life sometimes. 10th grade girl, level 8, not a gamer. Ghost for Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 2, because he is the most skilled soldier I've ever had the pleasure of virtually serving alongside of, and a great comrade. Rest in peace, Ghost. 11th grade, level 8, yes, she was a gamer. And the last one, GLaDOS from Portal, because even though she tries to kill you, she still loves you. This was a 6th grade girl, level 9, yes, a gamer, but 6th grade is 11 or 12 years old. But if you think about it and look at these quotes, the thing that Ashley and I kept looking at is that you really couldn't tell from the amount of knowledge and information and passion that the girls were talking about if they identified as a gamer or not.
So then we wanted to know, what do the kids think of when we ask them, what's the first word that comes to mind when you think of boy gamers? A lot more negative words. We've got nerd, competitive is enormous. Rude, obsessed, weird, aggressive, loud. So lots of negative words, and I think this is probably a pretty good snapshot of how people generally think of boy gamers. So we wanted to know, okay, of these boys that identify as gamers, because we asked boys as well, 69% identify. So we wanted to know, okay, of this percentage, I wonder how many of these boys want to see more females in their games? How many think that there should be more female heroes? How many think that women are too often sexualized? And this is what we found. Of the boys that identified as gamers, 86% want to see more women playing the same games as them.
Can you say that one more time?
I will say that one more time because Rosalind desires it. 86%, she loves this point, 86% of boys that identify as gamers want more girls playing their games, the same games as them. We asked them, do you want to see more female heroes? 55% of boys that identify as gamers want more female heroes. We asked them, do you believe women are treated like sex objects in games too often? 56% of boys that identify as gamers. You see where I'm going with this? We have this perception of what gamer means and of what people that associate themselves with that title means. As we saw with the girls, all of those girls, you couldn't tell the difference between whether or not they identified as a gamer or not. And with boys, you saw the word cloud. We associate all these negative words with boys that identify as gamers, but look at this data. It's crazy to me. I would not have guessed this stuff. And so what that sort of leads me to believe is that maybe we think that our consumer base is a lot more hostile and resistant to change than they actually are. And we also asked these kids, do you read gaming websites? The majority of them said no, and when they do, they use them for walkthroughs. So we're kind of in an echo chamber if you think about it, which is, I should make very clear, is not to say that we're all whiny babies that need to stop talking about women getting harassed, because that's bullshit. That's a huge problem in our industry that needs to be addressed. However, we are constantly in fear of our consumer base because there's a vocal minority that's giving us cause to be that way. But as this data showed me and showed Rosalind, these boys are not that vocal minority. And they don't make up the whole of our community. So why are we making games for the people that are putting fear in us when really these boys have the same values as many of the people that are working in the industry right now?
So, Thank you.
Thank you.
I liked it. So to bring this home to you in a specific, concrete way, one of the things that was really shocking to me, and we started this we started percolating on these ideas right after GDC last year. And then we started working on the survey all through, starting in the summer, through the fall, and then of course all of this vitriol comes in your industry, and I'm on the sidelines. I'm not a part of the gaming industry insofar as I'm not working directly with people who make games. But at the same time, I'm working with parents who are extremely anxious about games and very often not focused on the right things about it. And I'm working with kids who oftentimes are disengaged from school, and games are an important part of their lives. One of the mistakes that we make oftentimes in the world of education in schools and parenting is that we say, well, young people are losing their social skills because they are on games all the time, or they're constantly on social networking. They're always on this weird game. They don't know when I ask parents a lot of times what their kids are playing, they don't know. But they're like, it's very weird, and he's up all night, and I think he's addicted, and I don't know, and it's very stressed, right? They're very anxious. So one of the things that's really important for me as I'm watching this, and somebody who has worked to fight degradation, dehumanization her entire career, is to watch something that is so important to young people and is such a point of entry into their culture, and something that so often is rewarding to them, because young people, just like I bet maybe for a lot of you, when you were teenagers and children, that you went to games as a way to be acknowledged, to get good at something, to be recognized that way, that this was an outlet for you, that the relationships that you formed around games were very important. And like children today, there are kids where they are on games, and the relationships they form on games are the lifeline that they have because their real life is so terrible. And one of the things that in the sort of not gaming world that we say is that we assume that all of our relationships with these children in real life are really awesome, and that the relationships that they meet online with people in games, they're all sexual predators. This is the world that I live in, right? That parents feel this way, and that educators often feel this way. So we have to combat this, and we have to have young people who can speak out about dehumanization in a culture that they value so highly. But one of the things that I saw as we were doing this survey, and as everything was sort of blowing up in your world, is that there were young people that we were working with who, for example, one of our interns calculated that he had spent about 4 months of his life playing Call of Duty, right? He is a smart, incredible kid. When I first asked him did he know about Gamergate, he didn't. And a lot of the young people that I work with didn't know. It was only sort of much later that they even had a clue about what was going on. But when I did talk to this intern who loves games, this was an important part of his life, he didn't feel that he had the right to talk about it in the world of gaming because he would be ridiculed or shunned. That he was a white kid from suburban Denver who didn't feel that he had the right to be able to speak, because if he did, he would be ridiculed, he would not be able to speak in a way that was taken seriously. The question that I have for you all is that, I said in the very beginning that one of my jobs is to challenge the assumptions that adults have. And one of my jobs is to be a bridge between young people and adults. If we have young people who value what you do so highly, but they don't think that they can come forward to be able to change it for the better when stuff is going down in your world, that is a problem. It's taking away from your world. You've got kids who care deeply but don't feel that they have a voice. But I'm asking you, give them that voice because they want it. They just don't feel that they can have it. So I'm asking you, in some ways, like I'm asking teachers, because there's a lot of amazing teachers out there, and there's a lot of gaming and more gaming teachers out there that are doing amazing work with games and children, is to help them and affirm their voice and to be able to, and to not make assumptions about kids that in so many other areas adults do make about young people. I'm asking you to not make assumptions. And that what we saw in this survey is a lot of the assumptions that I've heard and that I've talked about and listened to in the gaming industry, that kids have a very different opinion.
So, what's it all mean?
What's it all mean?
What's it all mean? We as developers, understandably, let me make that clear, this is completely understandable, are afraid of our games not selling, obviously. You put so many hours, so much passion, so much energy into all of the games that you make that, yeah, it's terrifying to imagine that the game is not going to sell, 100%. But it could be that we are falsely attributing the success of these games to things that don't actually matter to the kids that are playing them. So, as we saw before, kids don't really care that much about the protagonists in their games. And in fact, boys don't really have a preference about whether or not they play as a male or a female. But we have this idea, and I've spoken to a lot of people in the industry about this, that they feel like they can't put females in their games because they're afraid that the game won't sell. But what happens when you're afraid that a game isn't going to sell is that you don't market the game. And what happens when you don't market the game? It doesn't sell. So all these people are thinking, well, female, and then so you see all these games with female protagonists. It's like, well, those games didn't sell. Yeah, because you didn't market them, because you thought they were going to sell to begin with. All these assumptions that we have in our industry that are perpetuating the same sort of norms, what are they based on? And that's what hopefully this talk helps sort of elucidate for you guys. I mean, you all know Frozen, right? Let's talk about Frozen. Everybody knows Frozen. I don't even know the name of the other girl. Don't tell me, I don't care. She's the main character, and I don't give a shit. Neither does any girl on the planet. You know why? Because they all like Elsa. Why do they like Elsa? She makes ice with her hands. How cool is that? Girls don't have superheroes to look up to. That's why Elsa resonates so much with them. During Halloween, like 1 million people came to our house. Almost 90% of the girls were dressed as Elsa. One was like an Elsa Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle hybrid. I don't even know how that works. It was cool, though. It was very dope. Cool. It was really cool. But Elsa is an interesting touch point for this, as well as if you look at any of the Marvel titles that are coming out. Marvel's making a lot more comics like Captain Marvel. They're including more Black Widow. There's the female Thor. What's the girl's name? Squirrel Girl. Yeah, Squirrel Girl. More and more titles with female leads, and it's not just because it's the right thing to do, it's because they know that girls have purchasing power, and they want more girls buying their comics, because girls are nerds, guys. They want to buy your stuff. So let's recap, shall we? Girls play all types of games. Boys already believe that girls play all types of games. Boys want more girls to play games. Boys don't really care if they're represented. Girls would really prefer if they were. Boys and girls think that the way that girls are represented in games is ridiculous. And the controversies we've experienced in the last few months are a lot less relevant in a broader scale to the kids that play your games.
So, in conclusion, here's what we want to leave you with. Why don't you go and do the last part?
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I like it when she does it.
You have nothing to lose and everything to gain by giving your games more interesting female protagonists. And not just female protagonists that are in string bikinis, but interesting, self-possessed, strong female protagonists. And look, guys, you make interesting, awesome games. So people are going to buy them. Yes, that is true. And you can keep sticking with the same formula and hoping it keeps working, but the landscape is changing. And Elsa is an anecdotal example, but she's a powerful one. There are lots of boys that we surveyed that want to see more interesting female heroes. And there are girls that are begging to throw money at you. Give them a reason.
Thank you. All right, thank you. So, questions, comments, concerns?
We've been instructed to ask you guys to line up at the mic.
Yeah.
Because if you don't say things into the mic, then
they will not be recorded. If people have questions, while that is happening, and I hope you do have questions, because we know this, well, now you're going to test us, but we've looked at the survey results like over and over and over again until our eyes glazed. But while that's happening, what I'd like to do is recognize Charlie Kuhn, who works with me. Charlie, can you please stand, please? And Charlie was really incredibly helpful with us about everything to do with the survey, everything to do with it. So he really should be up here, and next year if we figure out something else to do, he's going to be right here.
Yeah.
All right, yes, ma'am.
Hi. As someone who is interested in making games for adolescents, what would you guys suggest I do to directly get in touch with people in that age group without, as Ashley put it, being creepy?
I can answer.
I know a place we can get kids.
Yeah, I hadn't. You know something, and this is why I like coming to GDC. If you all are interested in working with me, Charlie, I'm looking at you about this, that we can help facilitate that. I am consistently, I'm doing the 3rd edition of Queen Bees right now, so I'm like looking for girls who game and talking to them a lot about it, and boys. But you can certainly contact me because we are in constant contact with kids, and there are kids who want to help you. Right, who would love it, especially kids who are in high school who are desperately in need of putting something on their college transcript, right? Don't forget those children. They are desperate, okay?
Thank you.
Hi. 2 quick things before I get into my actual question. Thank you so much for having this talk today. It was absolutely awesome.
Thank
Number
you.
2, it makes me so excited to see GLaDOS pop up 3 times in the protector system.
Girls love
because growing up as a teenager, I was bullied quite a bit. And GLaDOS was one of my main inspirations, and she's actually the biggest inspiration that got me into game design. My question is, now that you have all this information regarding teenage girls who really, really want female protagonists in games, what do you want to do with that information now? Are you going to share this with the world? Are you going to try to push this more into industry? Are you going to do more research into it as well?
It's such a good question.
It's such a good question.
That Charlie literally asked us before we were going to give the talk. And we were like, I mean, what I would really love is for us to find a way to disseminate this information. Because I hope you guys found it as interesting and as meaningful as we did. But I feel like this stuff is not the popular conception of any of these ideas. This is kind of the inverse of how we talk about these issues all the time. So I'd really like to find a way to disseminate this information.
Well, I'm hoping somebody here wants to write about it, and that we would be more than happy to work with you on that. I'm also going to be working, great. I'd love for you to. And also, I think we are going to be writing something as well. And then speaking for myself, part of my job has become to bring this information to educators. And part of my job is also to get them to stop being so anxious about gaming and social networking in general. So that's what we're going to be doing, is thinking about articles, hopefully working with people like you to be able to disseminate what we have. Do you want to add anything? Okay, good. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi.
Okay, hi. First of all, thanks for the talk, all that. No, but we've been talking about, get more girls into games, right? Our game right now that we're developing has a female lead and multiple female characters. But at the same time, I'm almost afraid to say this right now because, it's an inclusion thing. You're doing it because of Gamergate, whatever. But the thing that bothers me about, the entire Gamergate situation is when people are being like, oh, you're attention whores, and the other's like, oh, you're sexist. But neither side is working towards a solution. And I talk a lot about data and, big surveys and stuff. I'm almost afraid to write our female characters because I don't feel really up to it. And I admire female characters like Samus Aran. For me, he's always the love of my life. And I love female mechanic characters in games. I don't know what it's about, like a girl maker, figurine. But it always sounds so tropey. And so I'm paralyzed. I can write our guys because I'm I know guys, and this is cool. I think this is cool. My friends think it's cool. But I have such little, resources for girls. And you can say, well, go into the schools, talk to 700 girls. Well, we're always on a deadline. And it's just, I don't know where to turn to, because neither Gamergate nor opposition is going to tell me how do we get interesting girls in there. So it's maybe that's something you're considering using the data for to actually give us something to work off of. Enough okay, I agree, make more games. I'm doing it. Now help me, get out of the gate here.
Yeah, well, I'm also a writer. So I guess just from a narrative perspective, my response to that would be just make a character you think is interesting. I think I've had this conversation with a lot of male devs before that they're nervous about writing a female character, and I get that because it seems like it comes under, it seems like it comes under a lot of scrutiny. But the thing is that GLaDOS pops up 1 million times in the survey because she's just an interesting character. And it has nothing to do with the fact, it's interesting because we also haven't seen that type of female character in games pretty much ever. But she's not demonstrably or specifically feminine in any real way, if you think about it. She's just an interesting character who is female. So I don't think you necessarily need to get hung up so much in the development of your characters about am I making the right sort of female character? Just make a character that you believe in, and it will resonate. And I also think I understand the fear of what sort of attention you will get. but I think the more people that buckle to that fear, the more likely things aren't going to change. And the more people that keep doing it, the more normalized it becomes. I mean, there are a lot of indie devs that I know that have included female characters in their games, and I'm sure people cry foul at that, but for the most part, people respond really positively. I think more, and like Roz said earlier, a lot of kids are scared to come forward, so this data is supposed to be a reflection of the kids that are too scared to come forward. And the general consensus with those kids is that they are trending positively toward a more progressive idea of what games can be. So I guess I just would I want to try to reiterate, I know it's difficult, but try not to live in fear of the people that are going to shout, because they're not your whole consumer base.
And you know what? If you make a mistake, like, or whatever, like I'm a writer, you create a character, it needs to be worked on. When I'm working with racist issues or homophobic, whatever the issues are, if I get it wrong or if I don't know something, the most important thing is to be able to go to people and say, hey, I might not get this right. Can you tell me this? And when you do that, you have the legitimacy that you've gone through the process of your process is authentic. And the other part is, so do it, right? When you're doing this, you go to different people that represent what you think of as the gender of women or femininity or whatever it is you're trying to do, and ask what their opinions are about it. But the other part is, I got to tell you, and I've been on the end of hate mail and hate emails and rape this and cut off my head and rape me again and stuff like that. I get it. It's really a bummer when you get that kind of stuff. It is. It's like, wow, really? I get it. At the same time, you're fighting for the integrity of your industry. I'm fighting for the integrity of kids to be able to go to school and be able to be safe and be treated with dignity and have people not think they can just say the nastiest things to them. So this is a battle that we are in, and we have to fight and have courage and be able to do this, because this is what we do, right? Like, you got to fight for this. You have the right to make female characters, and you have the right to ask women what you think, and you have the right to make a mistake. And you might get some nasty things coming your way, and it might be scary, and you might be sitting there sweating bullets. I have a couple times, and then you get up and you do it the next day.
Yeah, okay. Well,
Hi.
Hi. Thank you very much for your work, girls. I appreciate your work because I think it helps us shine some light on a lot of misconceptions we guys have as an industry. My question is, when you guys ask people whether they identify themselves as gamers or not, gamer, I feel like, is a very nebulous term. And did you define this word for them, or do you allow them to just make their own mind about what it meant to be a gamer?
No, they actually came up with all of their words. All of those, the word cloud that you saw, we absolutely did not give any words or any suggestions for what that was.
Okay, thank you very much. I was just curious.
Hello.
Hi.
I'll try to be concise. I attended a boot camp that was centered on Women Are Not Too Hard to Animate, where there was a panel Monday. You, if this is taking place next year, should absolutely seek to be in that. You have a wonderful voice, and you guys would contribute brilliantly to that talk. So
thank you.
If you can look into that, I think it'd be wonderful. From a personal anecdotal standpoint, I'm a guy. I have only sisters. My youngest sister was 9 years, beneath my age, and growing up, we would play games together a lot. And our favorite game was Tony Hawk. The developers, I know, were limited from real-world reference, perhaps, but she was always dismayed at the lack of female characters that she could skate as, things of that nature. So I understand, and you're very right. And it comes to respect. It's not about necessarily appearance. I think it's the portrayal of the characteristics. Is it being handled respectfully? Do they have a powerful voice? I feel that's the way. So
thank you.
Bravo. Please hope to see you next year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Got to figure out what to say next year. Yes.
Thank you. So we have 5 minutes left, everyone, just so you know.
So we'll have,
yeah.
All right. Hi. My name is Justin Hefter. I'm starting a game studio with a female co-founder, and our target market is largely women and girls. And we've been doing a bunch of testing in schools and doing focus groups, and the girls versus the guys. The girls have been more passionate about the games. So the data that you guys have been showing is amazing, and it holds true. My question is related to the data. There was a big difference in perception of the sexualization of women in games between girls in high school and girls in middle school. There was a huge gap there, and I was wondering if you guys looked into that.
Oh, you can talk about
No,
that.
no, that's your thing. You do it.
Really?
Yeah, remember? Because it was like girls older, they get more, don't you
Yeah,
remember?
well, yeah. I mean, I just...
See,
Rosalind
that
works
wasn't
more-
even no sentences, and she understood what I was talking about. Really? Wrong?
Yeah, we wanted to find a way to fit that actual discrepancy into the talk, but we weren't sure where to put it. But it's interesting how, I mean, this is like a whole other talk, maybe not even at GDC, maybe just,
I don't know. We
TED
just
Talk,
randomly,
who the
we
hell
talk
knows?
about it.
But it's interesting because girls are a lot more hostile to girls when they're younger. And when they age, it changes. But like when we looked at like the middle school girls, when we asked them what words come to mind when you think of girl gamers, they were so much more hostile than the boys were to girls. And then when we asked about...
They had more negative
They had more
words
negative words to use.
in the Wordle.
And then when we asked them what words come to mind when you think about how women are dressed in games, or I can't remember the exact phrasing of the question, but it was something along those lines. Boys said stripper, and girls said slut. So it was really interesting. Those are middle school, both of them. So it was really interesting how girls, and I could go on a whole tear about it, but it's more, I think, when girls are that young of age, they're taking their cues off of kind of how they're socialized and how culture tends to frame women and frame women that look like that. I think you can speak probably more to this too.
Just to say that what we're seeing, girls can be their own worst enemy, right? Like I've written a lot of books on that, and so what you're seeing in middle school is girls being more negative towards each other and policing each other more in their negativity. And it's something that we need to do more work on. And so that's basically what you're looking at. What you're looking at is girls who are policing each other in social constructs. And as they get older, what we're also seeing is that girls, in some ways, are more politicized and more angry about the imagery that they're seeing, and so they're more able to vocalize it, right? Which is actually pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's great. But it changes as they age.
Yeah. But we're going to be doing more work on that.
Cool.
Yes.
Hi. I was thinking about marketing and in terms of how we're portraying like females on the covers of like our video games and stuff. And I've read about how like The Last of Us had to fight tooth and nail to get Ellie on the cover. It's like, come on, guys! Like she's a big part of our game. She's basically the protagonist of the game. Like, why aren't we putting her on the cover? And they had to fight for her. And obviously, it's won so many awards and it's won all these things. And it didn't even matter if the girl was on the cover. So how can we get more like game development companies and marketers to be like, hey, obviously it doesn't matter if there's a girl on the cover. What matters is it's a good game, and it's important that she's there and she's represented.
Well, that's the data that we found with when we asked the kids about protagonists. Is like, yeah, if the game's good, the kids are going to play it. That's true, but there's a higher preference for girls to see themselves portrayed in games, and boys don't really care as much. So it's just this sort of like, I think that sort of choice is more of a fear-based choice. It's just like, well, that's the way it's always been. Boys are always on the covers, right? And then people are just sort of scared to change the formula because they don't know what's going to happen. But hopefully what we sort of tried to demonstrate with the talk is that sort of what's the word I'm looking for?
Necrotic thinking?
Yeah, it's not necessarily reflective of what kids actually want. So, I think this is going to be in the vault. I don't know if it's going to be able to just be viewed, but we want to put this information out there so that you can just sort of show, if you work with people, like, look at this data from this thing, and like, you know, it's crazy to me that 55% of boys that identify as gamers want more female heroes. Like, that's just stuff that I don't think people are really aware of. I wasn't until we did this.
But I wasn't really surprised.
Yeah, so it's just there's just a lack of information, and we're kind of just going on the same tear because that's what's always worked in the past, so why would we change? But there's more opportunity for greater growth and greater audience, having a broader audience if we start making some choices that aren't even really risks. We just think that they are.
Exactly.
Yeah, if that makes sense.
Sir, I think it might have to be the last question, I think.
I can do it quick.
Yes, sir.
So both my parents come from really long education backgrounds, so I was curious what your hopes for once you get that into their hands, or even what your worst fears are of what they're going to do after that, what the next step.
What's my hope for educators?
Yeah.
Really, my hope for educators is actually way lower than what this stuff. Really, it is about getting them to a place of two things. One is that they somehow get to a place where they are able to emotionally disengage their reactivity and anxiety, so they stop thinking that if you play first-person shooter games, you are going to shoot up a school in real life. That's the first thing. Second thing is to be able to say to them that the experiences that young people have online are important to them. They're meaningful. So to say that they are not meaningful is it makes them disengage from you, and they will not talk to you about their online lives if you are so dismissive of it in the first place. So, and my real goal for them and with educators is to get them to that place so that they stop dismissing and demeaning something that's so important to them, and a way to get to young people some young people who are very difficult to get to. When you talk to them about games, not like, I go through a whole thing actually with teachers about how to talk to a child who's difficult, to see if they're interested in games and what games, and how you talk to them as an entree to maybe something else that's going on in their lives. If we can get them to that place, that's my goal for them. That would be huge, absolutely enormous.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. We really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.